Prepper here. Just want to make a quick video about why you should never stop preparing. And I've seen that a few of my colleagues here on YouTube have made videos on, you know, people that have stopped preparing or haven't been preparing as much. And I remember something that my brother had told me when the missus and I first moved out to the sticks, and that was, "What are you guys buying all those weapons for? You guys live out in the middle of nowhere, and nothing's gonna happen." And my response to that was, "Well, bro, when you think nothing's gonna happen, that's when it does." And after Trump won uh, last year's election, I told the missus, I was like, "Hun, I think we can finally slow down on prepping." And then the very next morning, I woke up and I told her, "Hun, that was a mistake. We can't slow down. In fact, if anything, we need to double our efforts on prepping." And we've been working on that. We've had some minor backups, or hiccups, should I say, that have kind of held us back a little bit. But that's all about um, planning for emergencies. Not everything's gonna go according to plan. So a couple things. You know, when things are good and things look all right, you want to keep preparing. In fact, you want to double your efforts, and that's just my thoughts on this. For the simple fact that it kind of goes along the old lines of the calm before the storm. Everything seems really good, and then the shit happens, or some other disaster happens that you didn't expect. So, in this regard, that's what I'm saying. You know, you have to definitely look at prepping from the calm before the storm outlook. When things are calm before the hurricane hits, that's when you want to be preparing before any disaster, first off. But right before that situation happens, before everybody runs to the stores, you want to always be stocking up your food stores if you're bugging in, or make sure you have enough gear for when you bug out, and you have the skill set for when for the time you leave home to the time you leave or you arrive at your bug out location, and may have to begin a new life in a new place. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when it comes to preparations. You got to remember, prepping is not a hobby, and that's what a lot of people get misconstrued and confused. You know, People that aren't into the prepping lifestyle, they think it is a hobby, or it's a fad, or some phase. And no, it's not. It's actually um, something that has been, I'll say, lost in the last 100 years, um, due to the fact that we have been coddled and spoiled into this system, where everything's basically taken care of for us. We don't have to worry about growing our own food. We don't have to worry about hunting our own meat. We don't have to worry about curing our own meat, preparing our own meat, cooking our own meat, growing our own food, so on and so forth. Um, and so, with that in mind, we are living in the modern days of the Roman Empire, to use that terminology to give you a historical reference, and everybody thought, yeah, the Roman Empire had its times where It had its emergencies. But at the end of the empire, the end of the Western Roman Empire, when the empire fell, no one expected that when the empire fell, that Europe would end up in the Dark Ages for several centuries. And if, I'll go if and when, because it is more a question of when and not so much of if, according to the information I've covered in one of my previous videos. It will be like the fall of Rome. The question is, what will happen after that? And that's a good question. Nobody can answer that yet. But I will say this. If history's taught us anything, it is that and I'm going to use Canadian Prepper's tagline here, which, by the way, he's got a great channel. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. The strong survived and the prepared thrive. And I think when things actually do collapse here in the US, it'll be much of the same as the beginning of the Dark Ages. Now, how long it will last, I don't know. Can't say. But you want to be prepared for it because a lot of people did die when during the Dark Ages. A lot of people. Especially when the Black Death came along. So you don't want to be a casualty. Nobody does it. The only strange thing is that I have met a lot of people that are more defeatist in the last few years, and they're like, well, if things go wrong and this, that, and the other, well, I guess I'll just roll over and die. And that's kind of a scary outlook, but nature always puts into us that we have to have this need to survive. So those are the ones that I'm a little more paranoid about. And I'm going to use that word paranoid because it actually fits. Because those are the people that will do the research on you, find out where you are very quickly. And no matter how much you try to hide, because one of those people actually did find out exactly where I was. And it wasn't because I did everything to point to where I am. In fact, I've done everything to keep people from knowing where I am. It's just that they happened to look in a place I didn't think they were going to look, and it was more of a person. So um, they figured that out, and I had to take steps to kind of close that loophole. Um, so, in that regard, uh, just remember, prepping isn't a hobby. Photography is a hobby. Painting's a hobby. Bird watching's a hobby. Listening to music's a hobby. Collecting movies, that's a hobby. Learning how to survive isn't a hobby. It's a survival skill that our ancestors have had and have passed down from generation to generation, except in the last, I'll say, 100 years or so. Maybe a little less, but definitely 100 years. And that is the part that should scare everybody. So if you don't have your survival skills down yet, start locking them down. Start learning them because you're going to need them at some point. Whether it's a minor disaster or a major apocalypse, it really doesn't matter. Because you got to be able to look toward any potential disaster, prepare for it, and have the ingenuity to think outside the box and figure out how to survive with what you got and how to get the supplies you need to keep moving. So, with that said, you guys have a great day and prepare yourself because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.